When I was beaten by Simon's enemies to the point of miscarriage, he was holding his first love, feeling grateful. Thankfully it wasn't you who got hurt. Don't worry, there won't be any danger from now on. Then he turned to me, his words dismissive, it's just a bit of blood. Stop playing dead. Turns out he married me just to protect his real love, using me as a shield for her. I was barely hanging on, looking at the kiss marks on his neck and the lipstick stains in the same shade as his first love, Lily. Suddenly, I just felt so done. After leaving the hospital, I calmly called my lawyer, draft up a divorce agreement. I want it done quickly. Is this about Simon? The lawyer hesitated. With a steady expression, I answered, it's a mutual agreement to divorce. Satisfied with this answer, the lawyer said he'd mail the papers in a few days. As soon as the call ended, a black car stopped in front of me. Simon rolled down the window, looking at me like he was doing me a favor. This time, I'm sorry. Since you helped Lily, what kind of compensation are you looking for? I kept walking, not even turning around. No need, I'll get a cab myself. Impatiently, he furrowed his brow, got out, and forced me into the passenger seat. Why are you acting up, Vivian? Don't try to piss me off with these childish antics. Lily isn't as strong as you are. This might be a small injury to you, but it could have killed her. During my hospital stay, he didn't visit once, so he had no clue about the extent of my injuries, or that I'd miscarried because of them. A few days prior, I had been kidnapped and beaten. By the time Simon arrived, I had already been kicked in the stomach, bleeding and nearly unconscious. All he did was give me a cold look and tell me to stop pretending. Then he turned to comfort the woman behind him. I found out later that woman was Simon's first love, Lily. He defied everyone back then to dump her and marry me, foolishly, because he had enemies. He was afraid they would harm her, so he used me as a shield. It was laughable how in the dark I was, thinking this was true love. The ones who hurt me landed in jail, but he was hugging Lily, relieved. Thankfully you weren't hurt. Don't worry, there won't be any danger from now on. I was bleeding and humiliated on the ground, so hurt I couldn't even speak. They remembered to call an ambulance for me at the last minute. The doctor said I had been pregnant for over a month, and lost it due to the trauma. If I'd gotten to the hospital earlier, things might not have been so awful. Remembering the kiss marks and Lily's lipstick shade on Simon's neck, I truly felt done for. With Simon and this lie-filled marriage. I had no energy to argue, just sat quietly in the passenger seat. Usually, I'd be the one trying to make conversation, but this time I stayed silent as he kept talking. You've lost weight. Have Maria make something to help you gain it back. I was busy with work these past days, couldn't visit you at the hospital. How was everything? I nodded absent-mindedly. It was all right. He turned, surprised by my response. Annoyed by my attitude, he stopped talking too. The mood in the car was tense. A few miles from home, Simon glanced at his phone and pulled over. Someone tapped gently on the window twice. It was Lily, looking pitiful outside. Simon, I know you're picking Vivian up from the hospital today and didn't want to trouble you. But I couldn't get a cab, and it's supposed to rain today. Even though this road wasn't too deserted, Simon couldn't resist her and let her in, completely forgetting he'd promised to spend the whole day with me. Lily stood firm, eyes red like a sad little rabbit, saying, You said the passenger seat would always be mine. Plus, that day, we did it here. How can you let anyone else sit there? My body tensed. I hadn't noticed earlier that the seat seemed recently cleaned, the scent of cleaner mixed heavily with perfume, like it had lingered for a long time. On top of that, there was a package of women's underwear in the back seat, probably bought after the fact. A wave of nausea hit me, my face turning pale. Simon was shocked, not expecting Lily to bring this up in front of me. He opened his mouth to explain. I'd already grabbed my bag and got out, waving him off. Suddenly remembered I left something at the hospital. I'll just head back myself. My husband cheating right in front of me, yet I didn't feel remotely angry. That wasn't normal. Simon realized this and looked puzzled, trying to grab my arm. But Lily had already pushed past me to sit in the passenger seat, clinging to his arm. "Simon, I walked for so long just now, my ankle seems sprained. It hurts so much." Hearing his beloved first love was hurt, Simon couldn't care less about me. He casually tossed out, "Stop being so scatterbrained, always causing trouble," driving off with her, watching the car move a few yards away. I couldn't hold back and leaned against a tree to vomit. That sickly sweet smell clung to my nose. The sky was getting darker, people hustling on the street. A few raindrops fell on my face. After a while, I wiped the salty raindrops from my face, shaking a little. I headed into a supermarket to take shelter from the rain. While I was there, I bought a suitcase, planning to pack up and leave tonight. Just as I'd checked out, my phone dinged. It was a message from Simon, telling me he'd left in a rush and didn't lock the door. He said I should hurry home and check. Thinking of all the files and important documents at the house, I quickly grabbed a cab and went back. Right when I stepped in, I realized I'd been duped. The living room went quiet as I burst in. Simon was kneeling in front of Lily, bandaging her ankle. The medicine box beside them, something I'd put together back when we first married. Simon often worked late. He'd get headaches and stomach aches. I'd gone to the hospital to get all sorts of medicine just in case. I worried he'd be uncomfortable. Yet, one day when I slipped while cooking and hurt my back, asking him to help with ointment. He didn't even look up, busy with work, answering impatiently. "Don't you see I'm working here? Use a mirror, you have hands and eyes, don't you?" In contrast to now, where he's gently holding Lily's foot with care, makes me feel like a fool. I should have realized Simon is only busy with certain people. He just doesn't love me. When he saw me, he was obviously annoyed. He wasn't supposed to be back from the hospital so soon. I didn't argue about why I couldn't come home, nor did I question him about bringing another woman over. This place won't be my home for long anyway. Lily, worried I'd say something, clung to Simon and pouted. I told Vivian to hurry home. "It's about to rain, and if she gets sick, you'll have to take care of her. Who will then keep me company?" Simon's annoyance faded. He playfully tapped her nose and chuckled. The two of them were all lovey-dovey, not caring that I was standing right there. After applying medicine, Simon went to wash his hands. Only Lily and I were left in the living room. "Did you see that? Simon's always cared about me. You're just the decoy," she sneered at me. It was clear she'd only called me back to flaunt their relationship. But unfortunately for her, my heart felt nothing. I just wanted to pack my things and leave this suffocating place. I walked past her to my room. Punching cotton. That's what it felt like, causing Lily's sweet facade to crack. She suddenly grabbed my hand. The diamond ring on my finger shone brightly under the light. Something about it triggered Lily, her eyes fixed on the ring. "That should have been mine. You don't deserve it. Take it off and give it back." Accusing me of stealing her happiness. Back then, Simon insisted on marrying me. Lily was too scared to stop him, just watched Simon pursue and marry me. They tricked me into this scheme, making me the victim. Yet Lily acted like she was the one wronged. Lily started yanking the ring. It hurt, so I swung my arm back, accidentally hitting her face. Her look twisted with rage, and in a frenzy, she grabbed a bottle of medicinal wine and smashed it on my head. The glass landed hard on my brow, almost knocking me off balance, leaving my ears ringing. Just as I was about to retaliate, Simon came out from washing up and stopped me. His grip was harsh, like he intended to break my wrist, coldly warning me. "Vivian, no one hurts Lily in front of me." Looking at Simon, I stayed silent for a long time. My body, fresh from the hospital, screamed in pain constantly. Only when he saw the blood trickling from my wound did he let go, asking Lily what happened. Lily jumped into his arms, eyes teary, sobbing. "I just admired Vivian's ring and wanted a closer look. The ring you gave to your bride must be beautiful. I waited so many years for one like it. I only wanted to see it, but she hit me, and in anger, I threw the bottle at her." Hearing this, Simon immediately felt sorry for her. He gently patted Lily's back, praising her for fighting back when bullied, and even asked me to take off the ring for her to see. That wedding ring had long lost its significance. I never saw Simon wear his. I was the one stubbornly wearing mine, clinging to a marriage on the edge. I removed the ring and tossed it, saying lightly, "No need to fight, it's yours." He probably expected tears or a scene. My indifference froze his expression, his lips tightening. Lily examined the ring, tried it on, found it didn't fit, and threw it in the trash, dismissing it. "Yours is dirty. Simon will buy me a new one, right?" Simon didn't reply. His gaze shifted to me, noticing the suitcase beside me. He frowned, asking, "Why the suitcase?" Before I could answer, he scoffed, as if seeing through my intentions. "All this for leaving over a minor thing? Vivian, aren't you too old for these childish games?" I shook my head, denying it. "I'm moving out and not coming back." Lily's eyes gleamed with glee, adding fuel to the fire. She suggested I was overreacting, just to get Simon to apologize. Simon's expression hardened, picking her up to leave, his tone irritated. "No need for you to leave. I don't want to stay here either. Come find me when you've come to your senses." The door slammed shut. I was stunned for a moment, then managed a bitter smile. Whenever we argued, no matter who was at fault, Simon would always ignore me until I caved in to apologize. Not this time. I wouldn't be so submissive. By the next afternoon, I received divorce papers from a lawyer. After signing my part, I packed my things, bought a ticket back to my hometown. All I took were clothes and documents, leaving anything of Simon's behind. Before leaving, I set the divorce papers and the miscarriage report on the living room table. Hopefully, Simon would see our past as reason enough for a clean break. An hour later, at the airport, preparing to board my flight, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Simon. "Have you realized your mistake?" he asked. I replied, not answering directly, "You should go home and see for yourself." After sending the message, I didn't care how he'd react and blocked all contact with him. Once off the plane, I immediately spotted my parents waiting at the exit. Seeing me, their faces lit up with smiles. Dad looked around, scowled, and muttered, "Simon let you come back alone again? Year after year, what a lousy son-in-law." Besides seeing them at the wedding, Simon hadn't visited my parents since. I told them the truth, I'd filed for divorce. Mom noticed my weary look and nudged Dad to keep quiet, then gently linked her arm with mine. "Good for you. Now that you're home, no more talking about him. Would you believe Allan, the kid you used to play with, is back too? He's done quite well for himself and even came by asking about you." We laughed and chatted all the way home, where my parents had a feast ready for me. After half a day of tidying up, I finally lay down. It wasn't until evening that I had a chance to turn my phone on. Instantly, a flood of messages and missed calls came rushing in. Among them was the neighborhood property complaint group. Neighbors upstairs and downstairs were tagging me like crazy in it. "Is your place getting demolished or what? All that banging, can we even rest?" A neighbor I was quite friendly with also sent me a message. "I saw your husband last night, drunk, being helped into the house by some woman. They looked pretty cozy. Is that what mistresses do these days, just waltz in? Take it easy, and if you need to hit him, try to keep it down." Curious, I checked the playback from the living room security camera. At first, the screen was dark but you could faintly hear someone talking. Simon came home, called my name, Vivian, but got no response and turned on the light himself. Once the lights were on, I could see he was back from what must have been a night out, a bit tipsy, with Lily helping him, almost glued together. Usually, I would be ready with some hangover soup, sitting gently on the couch waiting for him. But I never showed, wearing Simon's patience thin. He must have thought I was punishing him, making him coax me, and he angrily yelled toward the room. "Enough with this. Keep it up, and I'll never come back." Still no response. Simon pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration. Lily guided him to the couch to rest. Passing the table, they both paused at the sight of a divorce agreement on top. Simon picked up the thin sheets, expressionless until he saw the miscarriage report beneath his eyes widened. Lily gasped, covering her mouth. What? I thought it was just a minor injury last time, and she miscarried? Simon didn't acknowledge her, just stared at the report, lost in thought. After a while, he pushed her away and strode to the bedroom door, finding it empty. He pulled out his phone and made a call. The ringtone echoed unanswered. His face grew dark, and after the second call didn't go through, he exploded in rage, hurling his phone across the room. It smashed into the TV, shattering the screen to pieces. Lily flinched, trying to smile. Don't be mad, Vivian's just upset about losing the baby. A bit impulsive. And if she wants a divorce, you should be happy. Simon, I've waited for you. Simon gripped the papers tightly, irritation etched all over his face. Let's talk about the divorce later. I've got to leave for a while. He tore the divorce papers and tossed them in the trash. Watching this, I sighed and turned off the playback. Looks like this marriage won't end easily. With Simon's abilities, finding me would be a walk in the park. Sure enough, I hadn't relaxed at home for long when Simon showed up. He stood at my door in a black coat, his handsome appearance drawing the attention of passing neighbors. In all our time married, none of the people around here knew what my other half looked like. To avoid disturbances in the coming weeks, I took him to a quiet cafe. Hardly had we entered when Simon grabbed my arm, his dark eyes intense. Come home with me. I tugged, but he held on. I let him. Did you sign the divorce papers? I'll come back to finalize the process if you did. He looked at me, confusion and helplessness written all over his face. Why do you want a divorce? To me, it seemed like a stupid question, yet Simon genuinely seemed puzzled. In his mind, being Mrs. Shen was such a coveted title, I should cling to it. His blatant sense of entitlement almost made me laugh. With all the stuff you and Lily have done, right in front of me, what do you expect? Should I play dumb, watch you two in love, and play shield for her? Simon, I haven't lived enough. Recognition flashed in his eyes. He explained he'd taken care of anyone who might hurt me. It wouldn't happen again. As for Lily, he hesitated for a while before deciding. I'll try to be with her less in front of you, okay? I remained unmoved. Confusion brewed inside me. Why didn't he let me go if there was no love? Simon gritted his teeth, obviously angry, but softened his tone, reflecting on something. Vivian, I get it. Do you want an apology for last time? I shouldn't have left you in danger, leading to the miscarriage. Our child. Don't think I don't regret it. In all our years together, it was the first time I'd heard him speak to me apologetically. It brought memories of the child's origin. That day, we'd been at his family's old home. His aging mother was eager for grandchildren. Almost the entire dinner was about it. I had drunk too much, holding on to Simon when we got back. He was reluctant, pulling out protection, which I tossed away. Frustrated, he pushed me to the bed, rough and indifferent to my feelings. Back then, I hadn't known about Lily. I just wanted a complete family, and though it hurt, I tearfully went along. Now I realized why Simon rarely got intimate. He always had protection handy, maybe having been with Lily moments before coming to me. Disgust roiled through me, and I maintained my last shred of composure, not wanting to look at him. I never wanted your regret, just to be at peace myself. To me, you're a dirty piece of clothing. Who wears that again? Given Simon's status, hardly anyone dared insult him that way. Yet, he couldn't hold back. His grip on my arm trembled with anger, pulling me closer. Time ticked by. Neither of us spoke. Employees eyed us curiously. Just then, someone bumped into Simon, spilling scorching coffee all over him. He let go instinctively from the pain. Instead of apologizing, the man raised an eyebrow. Simon, mind your manners in public. Simon's face darkened. Allan, running into you here, what a coincidence. Allan? I was surprised, remembering that Mom mentioned Allan was returning around when I got off my flight, a quick realization that Allan had changed from a bullied kid to a refined businessman and seemingly knew Simon. Simon was clueless about our connection. Probably didn't want to lose face in front of acquaintances, whispered that the marriage couldn't end, and said, "I'm giving you a chance to really think about leaving." Allan only spoke with slight regret once the person was out of sight. "Looks like you won't be able to get that divorce." Meeting for the first time under these circumstances, I couldn't help but feel awkward. "Thanks for saving me back there," I said. But since I've brought up divorce, I've got everything lined upon my way over. I'd already texted Simon's mom. Told her not just about the divorce and miscarriage, but even exaggerated that I might never have kids. Simon's mom never liked me to begin with and longs for grandkids. I figured she'd do everything in her power to force a split. Allan and I stayed at the cafe, catching up on old times. Talking about our childhood, I couldn't help but smile. Back then, I was like a nightmare for the bullies in our town. I used to rush in to help whenever someone was getting picked on. With my fearlessness, I never lost a fight. Allan was one of the kids I saved. He mused, "You've gotten way more gentle. I can hardly see the old you." I got a bit nostalgic. Before I got married, I was still the same. I liked helping others. I met Simon by catching a pickpocket for him. Probably because of that, he thought I was tough and I could bounce back from anything. After we got married, Simon's family looked down on me, always finding faults for the sake of Simon's reputation. I worked hard to suppress myself, sanding down my rough edges, turning into the gentle, virtuous Mrs. Simon everyone else saw. We kept chatting until it was almost dark. I hadn't felt so relaxed in years. Allan offered to walk me home. As we got closer to my place, I waved him off with a smile. He suddenly called out to me, "Vivian." The street lights twinkled in his eyes with a strange brilliance. Maybe us meeting again like this is fate, and we could. Before he could even finish, a car zoomed past him. The headlights were dazzling, making it hard to see. Just before it could hit us, Allan pulled me close to avoid it. The car screeched to a halt barely a meter away, and Simon got out. His eyes coldly fell on Allan's arm around my waist, and he let out a sneering laugh. "So that's why you went to my mom, huh? Already found a replacement and rushing to divorce me?" I stepped away from Allan and calmly met Simon's gaze. Barely a few hours and Simon was already here. Must be his mom taking action to push for the divorce. So what if I did find someone else? "If it bothers you, let's divorce right now," I said, deliberately provoking him. Allan got it immediately, stepping up to meet Simon's eyes, speaking in a challenging tone, "Simon, if you're not going to cherish someone as exceptional as Vivian, let her go. Not everyone mistakes pearls for pebbles." Vivian? That endearing tone was a first. Even after years of marriage, Simon always called me Vivian in the same way. Simon's face darkened as expected. He seemed about to say something. But I couldn't be bothered and hooked my arm to Allan's, smiling brightly. "Let's go. My folks want you over for dinner." I left Simon standing there. He tried to follow, but his phone started ringing insistently. From a distance, I heard him frustrated, "Mom, I'll be back soon. I'm not agreeing to the divorce. Lily? I won't marry her." The next few days, I didn't see Simon at all. Allan, on the other hand, dropped by often. Never empty-handed, always bringing tea or health supplements. My parents were charmed by him, nudging us together, suggesting Allan as a son-in-law. "Allan, I always thought you and Vivian would be a good match." I rolled my eyes at my tipsy dad, dragging Allan outside. With nobody around, I came clean. "I know how you feel, but I've had a miscarriage, and I'm technically still married." Allan was successful, good-looking, obviously way out of my league. I didn't want to ruin his future. He mistook my words as rejection, looking a bit flustered. "I don't mind. If you want, I'll wait till you're officially divorced, or is it because of Simon?" I cut him off. There's no feeling left for Simon. I'm just waiting for the official split, so I can cut ties. Allan let out a bitter laugh. This divorce might not be that easy. I hadn't paid attention to Simon's situation lately, intentionally avoiding it. Allan said Simon's mom was causing a scene, even resorting to hunger strikes to force the divorce. Using all her connections, yet Simon blocked it all. He kept staying out at night, kneeling at his family's home just to stop her from meddling. I never thought Simon would go this far to not get a divorce. If he doesn't love me, why not let go? Right now, my mind's too jumbled to process. But outwardly, I just shrugged. It's not for him to decide. As the at-fault party, I can sue if needed. Besides, both Simon's mom and Lily aren't going to let this drag out forever. The next morning, our door was practically pounded down. An irate Lily was standing outside. The moment she saw me, she raised her hand to slap me. I wasn't Simon's wife anymore, didn't have to hold back or be polite. I glared, grabbing her arm with my left hand, swinging hard with my right. Weak compared to me, who grew up a wild child in the countryside, Lily's delicate arm was nothing. Her once pale cheek instantly turned bright red. I released her, and it took her a moment to steady herself, staring wide-eyed and covering her face, shrieking. "You crazy woman, how dare you hit me?" "Damn right I did." Barking at my door early in the morning like a stray dog. Lily was at a loss for words, stammering you after what I said. She didn't expect the usually soft and mild-mannered me to suddenly become such a prickly person. "Vivian, what did you say to Simon? Why won't he divorce? What's your scheme this time?" she accused. "Let me tell you, being Simon's wife is just a temporary loan to you. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're anything special," she continued. I raised an eyebrow and shot back, "And what are you?" "A shameless mistress under the banner of true love, a rat in the gutter." Lily flushed with anger and swung her handbag at my face. I could have dodged, but Simon stepped in front of me first, getting his face scratched by the metal clasp. A few drops of blood stained his shirt collar. Lily was shocked, touching his face helplessly. "Simon, you?" she asked in disbelief. He turned away, asking in concern if I was hurt instead. I took a few steps back to keep some distance. It had been days since I'd last seen Simon, and he didn't look well. Under-eye dark circles, a gaunt face, and a sharper jawline. Remembering how Allan mentioned he knelt outside Simon's place for nights, I finally voiced my question. "Why not go through with the divorce? Wouldn't it be better for you and Lily if I let you go?" Lily was also standing by, teary-eyed, waiting for an answer. Simon lowered his gaze in thought and finally spoke after a long pause. "When Lily agreed to our marriage out of fear of retaliation, it was over between us. Keeping in touch was about me not wanting regrets. Now, she's my past, and I won't divorce you for her. Vivian, you're a good woman, and being Mrs. Simon is your place to keep," he said, clearing it all up in a few sentences. "He is the most selfish person I've ever met. For his own reasons, he plotted to marry me, destroying my marriage and costing me a child. He knew how much I loved him, truly cared for him, and shamelessly exploited that love. Then, when I got disappointed, he came running back, reasoning that I was suited to be a good wife. And the way he treated Lily was just so he wouldn't regret leaving his first love. He got everything he wanted from both of us women." I looked at Simon, a man who once enthralled me to the core, now just someone repulsive. Lily was long in tears, devastated. "Simon, how can you treat me like this? I waited for you for 5 years. Simon ignored her, looking at me sincerely. "Vivian, please come back with me. Can't we stay married?" As he reached to embrace me, Allan, who regularly came around to bring gifts, blocked him with a stern face. "She's not coming back with you." Simon's expression turned icy, veins throbbing on his temple. He grabbed Allan's collar fiercely, warning, "This is our family matter, stay out of it." "About to be part of the family, what family matter?" Allan retorted sarcastically. Tensions skyrocketed. Not sure who started it, but they began exchanging blows, neither gaining the upper hand. The commotion was too loud. My parents rushed out from the room. Seeing them, Allan halted, taking a punch from Simon. The bruises were quite visible on his pale skin. "Allan," my dad said, concerned. I went to help Allan. He leaned against my arm like he was frail and needed support. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. Seeing my lack of concern for him, Simon was frustrated and upset, his eyes reddened with anger, pulling Allan away. "Vivian is my wife, keep your distance." I couldn't hold back anymore and slapped him across the face. The slap echoed clearly. Simon turned slightly with his pupils contracting. Lily, too upset to wallow in sorrow, rushed over, choking back sobbed Simon, "Are you okay? Does it hurt?" She barely managed to say before Simon, with a grim face, spat out, "Leave." As the scene escalated, neighbors began to gather to watch. My mom suggested everyone move this indoors to talk. Simon sat silent on the living room sofa, with Lily pale and avoiding being too close. I carefully tended to Allan's wounds, occasionally asking if it hurt. He shook his head, smiling, "You protected me when we were young, now it's my turn to protect you." The sight of us together hurt Simon. Dejectedly, he said, "Vivian, I'm hurt too." Faced with his pitiful plea, I was unmoved and didn't even spare him a glance. "You're strong, a little injury won't kill you." Simon turned pale listening, remembering what he once said to me, and panically tried to explain, "I honestly didn't know you were pregnant then, and later the hospital never informed me of your miscarriage." My dad raised his voice, shocked. "What? Miscarriage?" Under my parents' deadly stares, Simon and I recounted what had transpired recently. By the end, he fell to his knees before them, promising to treat me well in the future. My mom held me with tears in her eyes, heartbroken. My dad, panting heavily, snatched a broom from the corner and began hitting Simon. Even Lily didn't escape the blows. "Shameless, get out, don't dirty my carpet." "Simon, these years, what kind of miserable life did you give my daughter?" "Divorce, you must get divorced," he demanded. Lily, hit a few times, bleeding from her nose, ran out crying and shouting while clutching her head. Simon listened silently, stubbornly kneeling and looking at me. I sighed heavily, breaking his last sliver of hope. "Simon, just go. I've stopped loving you long ago. Every moment with you has been torment and disgust." His eyes were utterly dim and he stumbled out of my home. Less than a week after Simon left, we officially divorced. Simon's mother used her influence to expedite the whole process. It turned out Simon, after leaving, got into a heated argument with Lily, who was on the verge of an emotional breakdown. They were too worked up to notice their surroundings and were hit by a speeding car at a corner. The driver fled the scene. That place was so remote, it took a long time before anyone found them and called an ambulance. Lily suffered brain damage and ended up in a vegetative state. The harm I blocked for her came back to her, twice as bad. We tried to play the game, but both love and life slipped away. Simon barely made it out alive, unconscious in the hospital. In his life, he wronged both me and Lily. Luckily, I pulled away just in time. The day I got my divorce papers, Allan and my parents cooked up a feast to celebrate. They told me to forget the past unhappiness and live the life I want from now on. I looked at their hair going gray and felt my eyes well up, silently vowing to never leave them again. The shared property from the divorce was enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I used part of the money to open a judo studio near home, hired professional coaches, and encouraged more women to learn self-defense. I also go there regularly to stay fit. Allan still had work and couldn't stay here all the time. But whenever he got a chance, he'd buy a ticket back, even if it was just for half a day. Eventually, my mom and dad couldn't stand seeing it anymore and kept urging me. "Look at Allan, he's lost so much weight running back and forth." "Daughter, sometimes we have to cherish the ones around us." I did have feelings for Allan. He never judged me down during my lowest points and stuck around. But I wanted to be with my parents. Being with him might mean moving away. I had ignored my parents for so many years while married to Simon and felt the need to make it up to them. "I've already set up a branch office here. I can move the headquarters here soon." Allan suddenly spoke up, having been hiding behind the wall, was surprised, looking at my parents. They avoided my gaze, looking sheepish. Helplessly, I looked at the nervous Allan and nodded with a smile. So it's settled, we'll live here. His eyes lit up immediately, and he gently but firmly took my hand. In a room filled with laughter, I started a new chapter in life. Who knows what the future holds? But treasuring the happiness of the now is always the right move.